Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Early on in his work on interpretation, Aristotle is going to bring up something that I suppose many of us might take for granted because we've had an intro to logic class or some sort of background, the difference between universal and particular propositions, but it is something that is well worth looking at his treatment of, particularly since he's going to note some of the problems that we can get into if we're not paying close attention. So he begins, and this is in section 7, by saying of things, some of them are universal, and that is katholou, right? Literally of the whole. So a universal is of the whole of what it is said of. For example, human being. It doesn't just apply to me as a human being, it applies to presumably you, unless you're some other species that is watching or listening to this. And it applies to all of the human beings that exist, right? Then we have particular, kath, hekaston, and it's translated in some of the versions of this as singular or individual, and that works just fine because the example that he's going to use, Callias or Socrates, a particular person, that's a prime example. And when we use these terms in contemporary logic, we're usually going to say particular rather than individual, but it's all basically the same. So picking out a singular individual or particular member of the group that we're talking about. So we could say this human being, right? Or we could give it a name, and we might even, if it's a common name like John, we might have to say John Smith. Oh wait, John Smith is too broad because there's probably thousands of them at any given point in time. There's actually quite a few Gregory Sadlers out there. This Gregory Sadler right here is a particular. And so how can we tell these apart? He's going to tell us that with a universal, their nature. And it's interesting that he does actually use the word pefuka. They have arisen in order to be predicated, kategoresthai, right? So they are things that can be predicated, words, terms, ideas that can be predicated of many, right? Not just a single instance. So that's what makes them universal. And what makes them particular? That's not the case. Right? So it's not just that they can only be predicated of one thing. Aristotle doesn't say that in the text. He says, universals, that's their nature. Particulars don't have that nature. And by extension, they're not going to be predicated of many. Now, he's also going to tell us shortly after that propositions, affirmative and negative, must sometimes have universal subjects, at others individual or singular, and that this is a matter of necessity, ananke, right? So you've got one or the other. It's not to say that every single proposition has to be universal or every single proposition has to be particular, but that's the field that you have. You could say, if you want to be a little bit meta here, well, that's a universal proposition about propositions as well. And here's where we start to get into tricky stuff, both in Aristotle's Greek and in our own contemporary modern languages. People will talk about things that actually are universal, right? The subject, we could say, is universal. The term that he uses, epi ton katholou, so about or directed towards those things that are universal. But it might not actually be universal, he says. Me katholou. Why? Because you're not expressing it in a universal way. The form of expression is important here. Or we could say the form of the use. Uk hos katholou kechretai te apophanse. So that's the Greek phrase right there from Aristotle's text. And it's saying, not as a universal, right? With respect to the proposition, apophanse, te apophanse, that's in the dative, kechretai. It hasn't been used. It's coming from chreo, right? To use. Chresis comes from this as well. It hasn't been properly employed as a universal. Now you might say, well, what does all of that mean? Can you give an example? Yes. All human beings are mortal, right? The all there is doing the work of making it universal. If I just say human is mortal, anthropos, right, is human, well, does that mean all humans? Is that supposed to be a universal statement? You might say, well, of course, yeah, it just goes without saying. For Aristotle, it doesn't. And he says that if we want to be precise about these things, we really need to use words like all or every, pan, or we need to negate it universally as well by saying no, and that could be uk or that could be me. There's a variety of ways to express that in Greek. So this is actually quite important, and it has some interesting implications. He says that when two opposed propositions are about universals, but they're not stated universally, we can actually have them both true at the same time. So he's going to give examples like man or human being is white and man is not white. You're talking about multiple things, pola, right, in Greek. So multiple human beings, and you're saying, well, to say that human beings are white, that's true. Some of them are. To say that human beings are not white, well, that's also true, because some of them are not. Or we could say beautiful or not beautiful, right? And in each of these cases, he's saying the subject of human being is universal, but the propositions themselves are not being stated as though universal, precisely because they're lacking this term that makes it clear that we're talking about all of them. So he says the subject is not a universal in virtue of having every, but every confers on the whole proposition its absolute universality. And then he says, by the way, if both subject and predicate are used in this way with the fullest possible extension, the resulting proposition would be false. No affirmation could in those circumstances be true. Every human is every animal is a great illustration of this. Or, let's say all human beings were white. Every human being is every white thing. Well, no, because there's other white things in the cosmos. So we really need to be careful about specifying what we mean when we're using propositions. So that's an important thing. Ideally, what we do, according to Aristotle, is clarify how we're using the statements. And here, it's interesting, the translation that I have is bringing in ideas like extension, which are not actually there in the text, but will show up in treatments of Aristotle's propositional logic that are coming later on, and not just in modern times, but also in medieval times, when really what Aristotle is saying is we need to be precise in how we're using or talking about these matters. It's a bit easier when it comes to particular propositions because they denote individuals or particulars, right? All of them do require some degree of clarification, though, and our ordinary language, our ordinary uses of language, could in fact trip us up if we're not being attentive and careful to what's being said in the universal or particular propositions.